show you how to make the large cross applique from Kreative Kiwi. And for this I'm going to be using my 5x7 hoop, 2 layers of wash away stabiliser, my squizzers, masking tape, a selection of threads with matching bobbins, and my fabrics and batting cut to size. Underneath this video in the video description you'll find the link to this design and lots of other useful information. You're going to start off by hooping your 2 layers of wash away stabiliser, and then we're going to pin around the top edge of the hoop. So take your pin, lay it flat on top of the hoop, push your pin through and then bring it back round and back through the stabiliser, and that will anchor it in place. The larger the hoop that you use, the more pins. Load file number 1 into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline. And I'm using the same thread that I'm going to use for the satin stitch. Turn your hoop over, place your backing fabric over the outline, and then tape it in place. Turn your hoop back so the front's facing upwards. Place your batting down and your front fabric over the top, and then you're going to tape that in place as well. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure them all. You're now going to trim up the excess batting and fabrics from both front and back of your hoop. So turn your hoop over. Put a matching bobbin in your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 3, and that's going to do the decorative detail and the satin stitch border. Load your thread for the word bless into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. We're now going to free this from the hoop, so turn your hoop over and trim around the edge, taking care not to cut the stitching. We're now going to trim up around this edge because this is where our join is going to be. So we're going to cut it as close to the stitch line as possible. And that's our first segment completed. You can now put that aside. Hoop and pin your 2 layers of wash away stabiliser as you did before. Then load file 2 into your machine along with your thread for the satin stitching, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you a placement outline for your fabric and batting. Turn your hoop over, and then you're going to place your backing fabric over both outlines and tape them in place. Turn your hoop back, place your batting over the outlines and your front fabric on top, and then tape them in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure them. Turn your hoop over, and then you're going to trim up the excess fabric and batting from both back and front as you did before. bit of an oops moment there. I've actually cut the stitch line. So what I'm going to do is put some clear sellotape over that, and then when the satin stitch and zigzagging is done over the edge, you'll never know that that happened. So I've got my sellotape there. I'm just going to stick that down and carry on as if it hasn't happened. You're now going to pop your hoop into your machine. Make sure you've got a matching bobbin and thread in, because we're now going to do the satin stitching and the detail around the edge. Load your thread colour for the words house and hour into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. Before we go any further, I'm just going to remove this piece of tape. And we can carry on stitching. Okay, I'm now going to remove the rest of the tape, and it should just pull off like that. And there's a little bit more in here. That's it. You wouldn't even know it's there now. Okay, we can now free this from the hoop. So turn this over and then cut around the outside of the stitch line. And that's the 2 side pieces completed. You're now going to hoop and pin your stabiliser once more. Load your thread for the satin stitch into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for the bottom of the cross. Turn your hoop over, and then you're going to place your backing fabric over the outline as you did on the previous hoopings. Place your batting down over the outline and your fabric over the top. And then you're going to tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure them all. You're now going to trim away the excess batting from both the back and front of your hoop. So I've got my hoop upside down, I do apologise. So turn your hoop over. Pop your hoop back into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 3, and as before it's going to do the decorative stitching and the satin stitch around the border. You might want to load a matching bobbin in your machine at this stage. Change your thread colour for one for the stem of the rose, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. You're now going to free this from the hoop, so turn your hoop over and trim around the edge, taking care not to cut the stitch line. And that's the bottom of our cross finished. Once again, hoop and pin 2 layers of wash away stabiliser in your hoop. Load file number 4 into your machine along with your thread for the satin stitching, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for the rows. Turn your hoop over and place your backing fabric over the outline, and then tape it in place. Place your batting over the outline on the front and tape that in place as well. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure the two together. Trim away the batting from around the edge. You're now going to place your front fabric for the cross over this outline here, and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Trim away the excess fabric from around the edge of the stitch line. Place your fabric for the leaves over the outline here and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 4 to secure it. You're now going to trim up close to this stitch line, or these stitch lines should I say, here, to remove the excess fabric from around where the rose is going to be. I'm just going to turn this upside down so I can see what I'm doing. You're now going to place your rose fabric over the head of the rose. And I'm using some velour here just for a change. And then you're going to tape it in place. And because this is a bit stretchy, I'm just going to add some extra tape on the sides. You're now going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. You're now going to trim up all the excess fabric from both the front and back of your hoop, so turn your hoop over. You want to stay with a neutral thread, and then you're going to pop this into your machine and you're going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to zigzag up here, and it's going to stop where you need to add your first piece of the cross, which will be there, like so. So pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 6. So place your cross with the word hour on it and align it to the stitch line, and you want this stitch line here to sit on top of this stitch line here. And then we're going to pin it in place. Now be careful with your pins. Make sure that you pin hard up against the hoop so that it's not in the way of the stitch line. And then I like to add a little bit of tape just here and here, just to make sure that the corners don't lift. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 7, and that's going to zigzag along these two pieces to join them. You're now going to stitch round number 8, and that's going to travel up and zigzag to the next area, and then it's going to stop where we join the top part. So place your piece with the word bless on it and line it up to the curve of the stitch line, and then you're going to pin it, and make sure you get it straight because otherwise it's going to annoy you. And we're going to add a little bit of tape as before, just to make sure that it doesn't wiggle in the hoop. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 9 to attach it. You're now going to stitch round number 10, and that's going to travel to where we need to join the next one. Place your piece with the word house into position. I'll turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. And then pin it in place close to the hoop. And then once more we're going to tape the sides down. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 11 to secure it. You're now going to stitch round number 12, and that's going to zigzag around the rest of the rows and around the leaves. Insert your matching bobbin, and then you're going to stitch round number 13, and that's going to do the satin stitching on the cross. Change your thread colour for the leaves, and then you're going to stitch round number 14, and that's going to do the satin stitching and the detail of the leaf itself. We're now going to add the final piece of our cross. So line that up and pin it in place. I'll turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. And then as before, we're going to add a little bit of tape each side to hold that down. And I picked up the wrong colour thread. I'm sure you've noticed. It doesn't matter, I don't mind. Okay, we're now going to stitch round number 15, and that's going to zigzag along here to secure this piece to the rest. I just want to explain how I can correct having used the wrong colour thread. I use dark here and light up here. All I need to do is pick the right colour and then stitch over the top of what's already there, and that will change the colour to match the stem. And that's what it looks like after having stitched colour number 14 once again in the correct colour. We're now going to stitch colour 16, and that's going to do the satin stitch around the edge of the leaves. Load your thread colour for the rows into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 17. Okay, so that's all stitched, and you can see here that I made a bit of a mistake when I lined this piece up to this, and I've now got some raw edge showing here. So I'm going to show you how to correct that. We can't stitch over it because the stitching will be exactly the same width if we stitched it again. However, we can go over it with a Sharpie permanent marker. So, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to run that around there. These really are your best friend. And there, it's vanished. And even up close, you'll never know. We're now going to free this from the hoop. So turn your hoop over, and taking care not to cut any of your the limbs of your cross while you cut, free this from the hoop. All that remains now is to dissolve the wash away stabiliser from around the edge. So I've got a glass of warm water and a cotton bud, and I'm just going to dip that in and wipe it around the edge. And that's our large cross applique finished. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And we'd love to see your projects. And thank you very much for joining me.